Hi, good evening to all our friends and supporters out there who are watching our show, Never Again Live. I'm joined with Mayor Jolovitz, and tonight we're going to be discussing the future of Gaza as proposed by President Donald Trump and his team, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. Everything's going to be wonderful, we're told. There's a couple of impediments. Hamas has to not only disarm, but Hamas can have no control over Gaza. There's going to be some type of a denazification process in Gaza where they will not hate Jews anymore, not want to murder and kill and butcher Jews anymore. The educational system will be restructured, sort of like Nazi Germany after the war, that things changed and there was a Jewish community then in Germany again, and there were synagogues again, and Jews were not threatened in Germany after the war. So in Gaza, what are we supposed to envision there? Is it that Jews are going to be able to visit Gaza, do some commerce in Gaza, to normal shopping in Gaza? Will there be a synagogue or synagogues in Gaza? Can they stay for the night in whatever hotels will exist in Gaza? And will there be some kind of accommodations in the hotels of kosher food? And Jews are welcome and everybody's having a good time together. Mayor, nice to see you tonight. And what is going on? Who's invited to be part of this whole board overseeing Gaza? Is it people who represent countries where they have thriving Jewish communities, or that Jews have to hide out of fear of rabid anti-Semitism? The cornerstone of the IRA definition of anti-Semitism is the use of double standards to Israel and Jews. Is that what it's going to be? What's going on here?
Yeah, if intellectual integrity means anything, then we've got to keep calling it for what it is. I've quoted before on this podcast many months ago Eric Hoffer, who said, "We lie the loudest when we lie to ourselves." And that is happening too. You made reference to the Board of Peace. The last time, which was I think only 2 days ago that we were on, I talked about the fact that language is important, that the narrative is often dictated by language, and the very suggestion, the very name of Board of Peace is laughable. There is no such thing as peace, no different than there was no peace partner in 1993 when Oslo was founded, the whole concept. Would we keep lying to ourselves as much as we lie to others about the fact that it's actually doable? You mentioned this Board of Peace, and I'll use that language only because we'll know what we're talking about. It's part of the Donald Trump Gaza peace program, the 20-point peace program. Once again, just a scandalous lie. There are 59 nations that the United States said have been invited and will be participating as part of this Board of Peace. Of the 59 nations, for those people who've watched the news, they noticed the pageantry that was being held in Davos, where Trump was talking. He said, well, they've gathered 19 of the 59. And this is good news. And he declared quite bluntly, he said, we now have, and I'm giving this to you verbatim, we now have peace in the Middle East. Now, it might be that he just hasn't got the memos that the Syrians are slaughtering Kurds, that the Iranians have basically threatened to destroy Israel if any action is brought against them, and so on and so forth. We have Israel telling us that there's a threat that's coming from all directions, and yet Trump tells us that we have peace, total peace in the Middle East. Let me mention, there are 8 countries that are part of this Board of Peace that are Muslim countries. Those countries are Egypt, Indonesia, Jordan, Pakistan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and the UAE. And the question one has to ask is if a country which is as hostile, which has nothing to do with Israel, other than the fact that it's a Muslim country, if these countries which everything they believe in is antithetical to Israel's best interest, if they're excited about this thing in Gaza, why would Israel not be concerned if Israel's very enemies, Turkey, for example, on March 30th, Erdogan came out and said last year that Allah, God willing, will destroy the Zionist state. He said it was a done deal. And that Turkey, this is funny, would reclaim its rights to rule Jerusalem. Turkey would reclaim it. Why would we be excited about Turkey and Erdogan be part of this damn thing? And the question is Bibi Netanyahu and Israel doing this willingly? The answer is no. It doesn't really matter what the theatrics are behind the scenes. Some people say, well, Bibi needs to be there in order to sort of represent the one side which isn't going to be represented. When I look at the list of the 19, which I have in front of me, for example, I'll arbitrarily grab one. Here's one, Vietnam. Apparently there's a country called Vietnam. And apparently the United States thinks that Vietnam, wherever this country might be, has an interest in Gaza, that they're going to be brought in. Are we out of our minds? Pakistan. And I mean, one has to scratch their head in wonderment and just simply say why. The answer is quite apparent that Donald Trump, who is a dear, I did a lecture today, and I was saying it's remarkable that when you look at the people who truly do like Israel, who are supporters of Israel, President Trump is certainly one of those people. You mentioned Steve Witkoff. He's a clown. I won't even go there. Jared Kushner, another clown. But we talked about, you mentioned very briefly last time, Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham, a tremendous vocal support of Israel. And twice in December of 2023, and again in November 1st of 2025, just a few months ago, despite all his protestations that Israel's enemies have to be quieted, Israel is the only bastion of democracy and morality in the Middle East, everything that he says is right. And on both those occasions, he came out and said to Israel, but listen, you've got to accept a two-state solution. It's the only solution. The Saudis, he tells us, won't be interested in the Abraham Accords, the expansion of the Abraham Accords, if you don't create a state of Palestine. Now, here's the takeaway. Here's the takeaway. Every one of these countries, every single one on the list who are participating now, and even if you go to the broader numbers that are going to be coming in, according to Trump, every single one of these countries is in favor of a two-state solution, with the exception of one, and that's Israel, obviously. Why would enemies of Israel, professed enemies of Israel, be in favor of a two-state solution? The answer is obvious. It's axiomatic. The reason that they're in favor of a two-state solution, because it's not in Israel's best interest. That's why. It's not in Israel's best interest. And if intellectual, as I said, if intellectual honesty is to mean anything, people out there who are advocates of a strong and safe Israel, supporters of Israel, if they don't understand that the very concept of a two-state solution, once again, a misnomer, a two-state illusion, a two-state delusion, if they don't understand that that is not in Israel's best interest, not in Israel's best interest, if they don't understand that a two-state delusion is actually a knife at the throat of Israel and its future, then we have a problem. You and I were talking about, and I think this particular broadcast is predicated on this notion, and I'll let you take it after this, is the question is asked, when the two-state solution ideally is founded, we now have two states. The question is asked is, will Muslims, Arabs, be allowed to continue to live in the state of Israel? And the answer, people roll their eyes, these are supporters of Israel. They roll their eyes like, of course they will be. What are you talking about? And if you ask these same people, does that mean that Jews might be allowed to live in the state of Palestine in peace and harmony? And the answer, we've been told many times by every single Muslim country, no, Judenrein, no Jews. So the fair play that they're looking for, that Trump is going to bring us, is predicated on Palestine that doesn't allow Jews Israel, which, well, can be not binational.
Right.
If you love Israel, if you support Israel, you've got to understand that Lindsey Graham, good man, well-intended, but he doesn't get it when he thinks that a two-state solution is the answer to peace in the Middle East, or when anyone, and every one of these countries, with the exception of Israel, is wrong. This is a misbegotten notion that Israel can actually, Graham and Trump and Kushner and Witkoff have all said that if in fact this Gaza thing works out, where Israel is out, other countries help govern it, that this will actually increase Israel's security. Mind you, Israel out, Arabs in, security. We live, Meir, in the twilight zone.
100%. What seems to be the consensus in Israel regarding this from, say, the coalition government right now and the opposition, with the exception of Arab countries? We know where they stand. They're very clear. They don't want a Jewish state. But from regular politicians, Bennett, Lapid, are they thrilled? Are they embracing this idea that you're going to have a Jew-free Gaza? That there's going to be involvement from Pakistan, Indonesia, Turkey, Qatar? Are they going to change I-24 News in Israel or Channel 14 News in Israel and bring in Al Jazeera to in the name of peace? Is that how far gone? I mean, what is the reaction from the politicians in Israel, the leaders in Israel?
Listen, this whole thing, I think we mentioned this in the last broadcast. I applaud Donald Trump for taking the initiative and no longer being the wimp that the American government was. America's foreign policy was capitulationist during the Biden years, Blinken running foreign policy, whatever. It was a disaster. And it would have been even worse had Kamala Harris been elected. But the remarkable thing is where Trump is quite bullish in telling the Europeans what's going to happen in Greenland or elsewhere, where he's basically doing the right thing. On the other hand, he's placing all the pressure on Israel. And there is a philosophical justification for it, the way that it's viewed in America. And I'm talking about the Arabists in the State Department. The State Department thinking, which goes back when it comes to many decades, Israeli conflict, was predicated on this, that you have a conflict in the Middle East between the civilized, meaning Israel, and the savage, meaning, of course, all the Arab countries, Israel, and which are threatened to destroy, that it's impossible to find an Arab state, these savages, who are going to be reasonable. And so whatever attempt we try to do to negotiate some kind of future peace is going to, they can't be quieted. And so what happened? The State Department and the Arabs came up with a simple solution. Well, if the Arabs are not going to be actually reasonable about this thing, let's put pressure on Israel. After all, they're civilized, they're reasonable, and we can persuade them to, in this formula, to give while the Arabs get. And sadly, this has been the foreign policy that has defined at least the State Department's mentality for literally 2 generations. I mean, it's a terrible thing, but it's a reality. And this continues even with Trump being the most pro-Israel president we've ever had. The pressure that he places is on Israel. And I just want to mention something very quickly. It's important. I mentioned this to you right before we went on. One of the most anti-Israel pieces that it was ever produced was written in Foreign Affairs in April of 1977 by George Ball, the Undersecretary of State, notorious for being anti-Israel, notorious. And he wrote a piece called "Saving Israel in Spite of Herself." I mean, the title alone tells you what it is: saving Israel in spite of herself. And he was, of course, representing the Carter administration, we'll tell Israel what Israel needs to do. And allow me a very short paragraph. And when I read this, it almost tells you what Trump is actually doing vis-a-vis Israel. And it's quite disturbing that Trump would do this to the only country that the United States could have. Here's what George Ball would rely on. 77, and see how it applies today as well. He wrote, thus the parties, meaning Israel and the Arabs, thus the parties will never come to anywhere near an agreement by the traditional processes of diplomatic haggling, unless the United States first defines the terms of that agreement, relates them to the established international principles, and makes clear that America's continued involvement in the area depends upon both parties' acceptance by both sides of the terms that the United States prescribes. Translation, we'll tell the parties what they will do in order to accomplish the end goal. Well, the fact that he's putting pressure on Israel, including insisting that Israel leave, of course the Arabs have said, yes, we agree. It's the Israelis who are victimized by this policy. And this policy, mind you, 1977, George Ball, notorious for his hatred of Israel and viewed as such, is exactly what's happening with this forced negotiations, arrangement, and what have you, in Gaza, right, that Israel is sort of going along with because it doesn't want to be browbeaten anymore. And yet this is from Trump, who is not a George Ball. He's a person who cares about Israel. And we realize that we're losing control, or have lost control of ideas.
It's unbelievable. I mean, let me just make one comment about this situation that's going on. That when we talk about, in the plan, the 20-point plan, that there's got to be a form of a denazification process. Well, after World War II, Nazi leaders were hung at Nuremberg, and then there was a denazification program in Germany to change society, to change the thinking, to get them away from Nazism. And I think to cut the bullshit, to use that word, if you want to change, Hamas leaders have to be rounded up, internationally hung, as Nazi leaders were at Nuremberg, and then a process of some form of forced denazification to take place in that society. And with the absence of those two, this is not going to work.
No. In fact, I'd mentioned, and you had mentioned Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham, a friend of the United States, of Israel, basically saying, Israel, you have to come to terms with the two-state solution. Steve Witkoff, who I've always said is a clown, basically came out, quite controversial from those people who support Israel, and basically said, if the Ayatollah simply self-polices, decides to limit, mind you, the word limit, the ballistic missiles that Iran has, that it doesn't produce any more enrichment, whatever, he's more than welcome to join the family of nations. Okay, it's remarkable. So the other side, the antagonists, are saying that the United States, despite its bellicose statements, is actually telling the other side, listen, guys, just behave for a while, and you'll get what you want. And I guess I have to end there because the clock is sort of ticking.
Yep, 100%. Listen, Mayor, great having you on. And as we move forward, we're going to have another episode early next week or over the weekend. We're going to watch events as they unfold. One other point, maybe a quick point, maybe we'll see, perhaps maybe this whole thing is a diversion, that Trump wants everyone to start thinking and focusing on this, and that he's planning to attack Iran, and wants all the eyes off that right now. Who knows? We don't know, but we're hoping that our leaders, yes,
that might be the case with Iran, but what he's doing in Gaza is still bad news.
Right, 100%. 100%. Mayor, thank you very much. Everyone, please, who joined us, please share this on whatever social media platform you use. And If you'd like to get involved with us, contact us through our website, israelnow.ca. Either send us an email that you want to get involved, or send us a contribution if you'd like to support our work. And please go on our YouTube channel, subscribe if you're not subscribed already. And we're just trying to improve our listenership with our viewers, with our YouTube channel. So thank you very much, and we'll be back. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.